Hello, everybody. This is Gene, and tonight I have with me Ryan, the ETC captain from 2019, and Jeremy, the 2020 ETC captain.
Hey guys.
Hey, what's up?
So, um, there we go. Sorry, I got a little bit of an echo on my end. Got rid of it. All right. Just wanted to bring you guys in here because I know a lot of people are interested in hearing about the ETC and how it went for you guys and what are your thoughts on it. So I'll kind of turn it over to, I guess, Ryan at first because this was your team.
Yeah, so if for anyone who doesn't know, the ETC is a 8-man team tournament that take place somewhere in Europe every year. This year it was in Novi Sad, Serbia. I forgot where it was. This was my first year as captain. I took over from Chris Mintz. 2 years ago, so 2018, we placed 16th. 3 years ago, we had placed 5th. We were obviously a little disappointed with the performance last year, but we had a pretty strong team, and I think we were pretty excited about coming back this year and proving we can do a little bit better. Gene, you have control of the slides, I think, right?
Yep, I do, unfortunately.
So here's the roster, and with the armies that we ended up on. Chris Mintz, who was the captain last year, took his regular VC. I, for the third year in a row, took ogres. We had Jake on dark elves, which was kind of a last minute swap. He had been testing out Empire for a good part of the year. Jeff ended up bringing warriors. Also had been working with dwarves for a good chunk of the year. Those were kind of our two last minute kind of list swaps. We had Justin Berge on ID, Phil on the Undying Dynasties. Then we had originally Joe Finlayson on Vermin Swarm. However, he had a conflict that kind of came up last minute. So about a week before list submission, we found out Joe wasn't going to be able to come. We had to scramble a little bit to find a replacement. And thankfully, Keith Bono, who had played in 8th edition ETC, had kind of been getting back into the game, was available to come and decided to step up and help us. We also had Mike Smith, who was the one new player this year on Demons, and then obviously we had Jeremy and Hugo as our coaches. So overall, we were returning 7 of the 8 original people. We did try to focus this year on trying to make it a little more structured and a little more intensive than we had this year. So you can I think hit the next slide. So we said everybody has to play at least 50 games. I think in years past people had gone past that but wanted to kind of make it a formal thing, and honestly most people blew past that this year. We had 2 team weekends where we tried to get the majority of the team together to sit down, talk about lists, do slides. We also had I subjected the team to I think 180 slide PowerPoint presentation on kind of general gaming strategies. And this kind of went along. Hugo, who was our coach, it was his first year with the team, and he was just awesome. So he had won the U.S. Masters at the very end of the year, and wasn't able to be on the team because he was moving back to Europe. However, he wanted to be involved, and he really brought an approach that tried to focus more on what he called the macro level of the game. So I think a lot of times we focus on, I have this cool list and it has all these units, and the game came down to I rolled a 7 and he rolled a 10 on this charge and it all flopped. But you hear from a lot of good players that there's a lot of the games don't really come down to dice. Like there may be dice spikes that makes the game memorable and unique, but a lot of it comes down to kind of more basic stuff that you can do to improve your play that often we don't think about. And so Hugo this year really took kind of a Spanish approach to the game, which is trying to analyze it from a kind of higher up level, taking a step back from the specific units and try to look at what are our strategies, how are we developing lists to move to take advantage of the terrain, and overall try to improve our play more than just kind of trying to bring the best list we can. And so this PowerPoint was kind of our start to try to do that. You can see some of the slides talking about kind of where how to analyze the maps, where the engagement is likely to take place. And Hugo was awesome. He also went through all the ETC maps once they came out and analyzed each one and gave us kind of, okay, if it's this scenario and you're picking sides, this is the right side to pick, and here's where you should put your objective. It was stuff that we had never really thought about before and was, I think most people would say, super helpful.
Yeah.
And I think it really kind of helped bring us up a step in trying to improve our game and get to the level of some of these really top countries. And then we had several Skype calls. We try to do one every couple of weeks, just get the team, together, talk about strategy, about different armies and builds, and kind of just trying to get people who are spread out all across the country together and working together. And then on the next side, we had the last part of it is obviously trying to perfect our matrix, which is analyzing and predicting matchups more accurately. So this is an example of our matrix versus New Zealand. So it shows all of our armies, all of their armies, and kind of how we rate it. And then since it was my first year as a coach, I definitely had to try to take advantage or try to learn from Chris on how we use this information to predict matchups and get ones that are going to win for the team. So that was kind of how we approached it this year. Jeremy, it was your second year. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I felt really good about the approach we had, especially like you said with the macro stuff that Hugo brought up and sort of brought into the mix. I think it was a good year of prep. I think we're going to continue to do a lot of the things. We'll go over that in a little bit. But yeah, no, I think you did a great job with the prep, Rye. And like I said, the macro stuff was good. And during the games, actually, that's kind of like what Hugo focused on as well, was the sort of, after pairings, he would sit with the guys really fast, go over the map pack and be like, here's, what's your deployment plan, and kind of like give them a little bit of a pep talk and a strategy session right before their games. And I think that helped a lot too. Especially for some of the players who were not 100% sure, like sort of how to deploy. I think that also was a big piece for us. And just having two coaches in general to sort of help, watch the games, and it was great. And one of my favorite points of the entire weekend was Hugo came over to me. He's like, "Man, I really love coaching." And I was like, "Yeah, dude, I know. I told you it was really fun." He's like, "It's like I'm playing 8 games at once," and I'm like, "I know, it's awesome, man." So. Yeah, we had a ton of fun, and I think our prep was great.
And we talked about it a little bit, but I think I had never really thought about kind of taking this macro approach to the game until Hugo. I think we had our first Skype session, and he was kind of, I think he said, "Is this what you guys plan to do?" And we were like, "Well, yeah, it's what we've done in the years past." And he's like, "I think you can approach this a different way." And it really, in a lot of ways, kind of opened my eyes, because I think, we get so involved in kind of the micro level, the nitty gritty, which units fought what. But you really can kind of step back and see the game in a broader perspective. And it really does help. It helps you clarify things that you should be doing, and a lot of players probably are doing, but don't really have a name or kind of realize it. Yeah. And I think it kind of gives a structure and a language to what you're doing And it also helps in the times where you look at the game board and you're like, I don't really know what to do here. You can kind of take a step back and say, okay, what should my objectives be? When I'm in doubt, I know that these things will usually help me win the game. So how can I do them?
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, so it was very helpful. I think we can, with kind of a more formal approach, we can actually get even better with this.
Yep. Totally.
All right.
So our first round, we found out about 3 weeks before ETC, was against New Zealand, which was a lot of fun because we're kind of isolated from Europe and we don't get the chance to go to these big team tournaments that people have, we try to make up for it by having scrimmages with usually other teams that are pretty geographically removed. So we had scrimmages with Australia this year and Ireland, and we actually happened to play New Zealand twice before the ETC. And so then it was a lot of fun when we got New Zealand as our first round opponent because we knew each other very well. We had won the first scrimmage, I think 84-86. The second scrimmage never got completely finished, but they were definitely winning through 5 or 6 games.
Mm-hmm.
At the event?
These were the 2 prior to the event.
Right.
Yeah.
We do just really quickly. When we do the scrimmages, like we'll just tell the guys to play over the course of the next week and a half or whatever, and they'll do pairings and stuff, and then it's just takes place on Universal Battle Online, and we'll just watch as many games as we can. So that's kind of like the format of the online scrimmages.
Yeah, and the scrimmages are kind of the purpose of them is to try to get our strategy for pairing up and try to kind of stress test lists and strategies against other teams, because it's one thing when you think you have a really good list on paper, or you play it in your club and you're doing well, and it's a different thing when you get plopped up against some other people. And New Zealand and Australia both have a reputation for taking some very interesting lists, and for anyone who's seen the list that came out for ETC this year, their Orc and Goblin list was definitely a very interesting list, and I think actually terrified a lot of the team. It had been there for both practice rounds, and I think we had lost to it pretty badly twice.
Yep.
Justin played it the first scrimmage with his High Elves, and I think got 3 or 4 points, and then I don't remember who played it the second round. It might have been, it was either Joe or Jake, I think, and I'm pretty sure it won big again.
Yeah.
So coming into it, we definitely that was actually the list that most people had kind of the biggest issue with, and I think almost everyone in the team got at least one practice game with and probably against the list.
Yeah.
So that was one we really kind of tried to focus on figuring out who could really play.
All right. Well, this is how you had the matchups.
Yeah. So this is how we paired into it. So obviously we thought we paired into a relatively good one. I was the only one who took what we thought was a losing match. So for anyone who doesn't know, we have a 5-color matrix. So red is the worst. You're predicting somewhere between a 0 and a 3. Orange, you're usually looking at a 4 to a 7, I think.
Yeah.
The bands of 4 points. And then it goes, so red, orange, yellow, green, and then purple is the best band. And so if you predict a 20, you say, I will 100% 20 of this list, it's a purple. You're going to see mostly yellows and greens and a little bit of reds because or a little bit of oranges because we purposely tried to pair to avoid our really bad matches. Just in how the pairing process works, it's pretty hard to. It's easier to avoid bad matchups than try to trap things on good ones, unless you've really prepared for that ahead of time.
Okay.
So you'll see that most of the things tend to skew in a narrow range between mostly oranges to greens. There's very, very rare that we get a red or a purple because obviously the other team's trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, and Chris and Ryan take care of our pairings during the matches, and you can see here they did like a great job. There's only one orange on the board, and honestly, that was the case with most of our matchups. I think it's by and far like great matchups, but it comes down to like was the matrix accurate, and do weird things happen during the game like in any game. So
you'll notice one round of these 6 that very clearly has a different pairing result than some of the others. I think it'll be pretty clear, but so New Zealand, we thought we paired pretty well. So if you look at this, I mean, we think we paired into a winning round just based on this. And as the results show, it came out pretty well in our favor. So they had paired Chris into a dwarf list that I think was trying to meant to be a kind of a blocker list. So it takes bad matchups, it just holds points. And obviously that didn't work against Chris. He just kind of ran it over. And then I frankly got lucky in my game. It was an ogre on ogre match, but it was flags, and my opponent just cornered really hard. We had played twice, or no, yeah, I think we actually played. No, we played once in the practice rounds. I had won the game small, but he had 2 cannons, and knowing that it was flags, I think we both felt that he had an advantage. And then when he cornered, he basically put his whole army in a corner, and there was no terrain around. He just had these 2 wide open fields of view, and so there wasn't really a good approach. I took my time out in deployment and talked to the 2 coaches and said, look, if I put my whole army in the other corner, he's just going to fire cannons at me for 6 turns, and he'll probably kill a couple of my monsters, but I can almost guarantee I will get what I predicted, which will be about a 7 to 9. I think I told Jeremy and Hugo. Because we'll probably push the objective and then he'll win on points. And so we talked, and they told me, look, if you can get what you predicted, just guarantee that, and we'll trust everybody else to make it up. So that's what we did. It was a pretty quick game, but I got real lucky at the very end of the game. I summoned a totem. He didn't have the dice to stop it. The totem breathed on one of his tribesmen. The tribesman failed an 8 rerolled panic, ran off the board, and gave me the objective. So it wasn't any magical skill, but that did help. And Jeremy could probably talk about the other games because I was playing my game, so I don't know quite what happened on the other.
Well, for the most part, it looks like you did a great job of getting what you predicted you were going to do on these games.
Yeah, you see, nobody got under their prediction, and we had 3 people who got over their 4 people who got over their prediction.
Right.
And that's really kind of what we had tried to hit home with the team is you don't need to be a hero. Obviously, if we can get good points, we want it. But the most important thing is just be accurate on your predictions and hit your prediction, because if we can do that, we think we're pairing into winning rounds. If we can hit our predictions, we should win every round. So that was like, when Hugo and Jeremy talked to me, they said, if you can guarantee your prediction, just get it. Yep. Because if I pushed into his kind of castle in the corner, it would have been a big result, but it could have been a big result against me.
Right. It wasn't worth the risk.
Yeah. So it would have been a big win to him or me. And they said, just take your 8 points and go home. And I got a little bit better, but yeah. But that was kind of the strategy we went in on, is we thought we had a pretty solid team, throughout. We thought we had some depth. And so we said, let's just try to hit our predictions, and if we pair right and we predict right, we should be fine. So obviously this round went great. We capped New Zealand, so we scored over 100 against them.
Yep.
Right. And what was the cap? 80 or 680? Right.
100.
100. Okay.
Yeah. So if you score over 100, then you do not get more than 100 points for the round. Same if somebody scores 100 on you, you can't get less than 60. And it's to try to keep people a little bit closer so somebody doesn't get 2 easy games and just run away with it.
Got it. All right. So that's New Zealand. And
Yeah.
Czech.
So our next round was against the Czech Republic, who had also capped their first round. Jeremy, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, I mean, it looks again like we got good matchups. It's like we have a purple in there for Mike, so we're expecting big things there. And then the two oranges, but it's great when we get somebody like Ryan on an orange because as a really insane player, we know he can possibly turn that around. So it looks like really good on paper.
Yeah.
Keith against UD on an orange. Keith had the type of army where with VS where it's pretty hard to like table him, right? So we were pretty confident, I think, there that he could get some points out of that as well. So we're looking pretty good going into matchups here.
And I have to give a big shout out to Keith because he was the one who picked up this army, a week, about a month before ETC.
Yeah.
He basically took the army that Joe had been using because Joe had been getting very good results for it. And Keith kind of said, look, I'm rusty. I'm definitely not on the top of my game. But he said, just give me the bad match. I'll fight for points. And, I think I can contribute that way. And I would have to say Keith lived up to that expectation. He did very good eating some bad matches for the team and almost always consistently scraping out a decent amount of points. And if you look at this, when you're doing these pairings, zeros kill you. They absolutely just kill you because, it's just such a big swing in points that even if you lose every match, if you lose 4 matches, 7 points, but then, your other 4 get wins, you're going to win the round. It's better if you can keep your losses small, then you have a much better chance. So shout out to Keith. And then Mike, I would say the hardest thing to do at ETC is not to get a red match and play well, because when you get the red match, nobody's expecting anything from you. You've predicted you're going to do bad. So for some reason, the team gave it to you, and really anything you bring out of it is gravy. Yeah. But getting a purple is hard enough in our pairings, and then actually bringing it home, because a lot of times the other person will play very differently because he's gotten a red match. Yeah. So he's going to play hyper defensive, which makes it harder to get points. So Mike got a purple, which was pretty rare, and obviously had a lot of pressure on him to bring home some points. And this is how we did.
Yep, he did it.
So once again, our pairings were pretty accurate. The 2 big spikes were Chris played a Beast Herd game, which it sounds like was pretty dicey in the middle of the game, and then Chris just cracked it open. Yep. And brought home a whole bunch of points. And then the other one was Phil on the Vermin Swarm. The UD on Vermin Swarm match it's just bad for the Vermin Swarm.
Yeah, brutal. But you can see there, like it was basically the mirror to that with Keith, and he brought home 6 while the Czech Vermin Swarm didn't bring home any points. So it's a big deal.
And that was something we specifically talked about in our team meeting after the pairings. Is we said, look, it's a UD on Vermin Swarm for both teams. And we think the UD has the advantage, but all we need is the combo of Phil and Keith to do better than their VS and UD. Wow. If we can bring home, 21 points out of that, then we're winning the pairing. Yep. And obviously we brought home 26. So Keith limited his loss and Phil maximized it. And so, they both did great. They got us what we wanted. I took a loss on the dwarves. It's weird because obviously we did very well in this round. We won the round. We capped again. But it's hard because I came out of it thinking I just lost my game. And it was honestly a game I could have 10-10 pretty easily. And then things kind of folded a little bit for me. And so I came out of my game very pessimistic, and then obviously at the end of the day won, even though I hadn't felt like I had done very much. The team's on 200 points. Yep. So this was day 2. Belgium is a very good team. I think they had scored 4th last year. Mm-hmm. And they were so going into day 2, it was us and Belgium as the only 2 teams who had double capped. So we are tied for first at this point. We are on table 1. We're playing Belgium, who we know is going to be a hard team to play. We had the advantage. So this is the second day. So we had an evening to kind of sit down, look through their list, talk about it, and Hugo kind of brought up. He looked through their scores and said, they have 3 people who in the last 2 rounds have gotten almost all their points. So that was the Belgium UD list, the Belgian Ogre list, and the Belgian Dark Elf list. I think were significantly their highest scores at that point.
Yep.
And so we kind of came into it and said, and especially that Dark Elf list, it was 3 Krakens, all fast cav, and 2 Flying Lords, I think.
2 units of the Warlocks. Gross.
If any Dark Elf players out there are looking for a good list, this list was just stupid good. Props to the Belgian guy for coming up with this. But this list, when we looked at the pairings, nobody wanted to play it. It was a really big issue for the team. And we talked through it, and Chris had the best matrix. I think. So when you look at all of our matrices, if you look up all 36 teams, the 4 worst matrices that we had were Belgium, Germany, Italy, and Spain. So those were the 4 teams that we paired the worst into. We thought we paired into, or our matrix in general was less than average. I think they were all 2.8s when you average them out, which would average into an orange. Well, I guess a low yellow. So it was a tough matrix. Nobody wanted to play this Dark Elf list. We looked at Chris' matrix and we said, look, there are 2 matches he has oranges on. The rest are yellows and greens. They may not have precisely our matrix. So if we put Chris forward, he may not get both oranges. But if he does, we're going to give him the Dark Elves and suck out the bad match for the team.
Nope.
And Chris is a good player, and we're going to trust that he can bring home points. And so we tried to pair our good players into the 3 lists that were really giving us a trouble, which again were the Dark Elves, Ogres, and UD. And I think we did okay. I mean, Jeff got a green on the UD. I got the Ogre Mirror, and Chris got the Dark Elves. So really what we were hoping is that our team was a stronger team all around, and that if we can hold those 3 to small losses or draws, then the rest of our team can bring home big points. Was kind of how we looked at it.
Yeah, and again, I'm looking at the pairings, and I see 1 orange. Everything else yellow or better.
Well, they did a great job again.
Yep. All right. So.
So obviously it went okay for us. So the first thing that happened was Keith on the High Elves. They came over. Keith came over as we were deploying and said, "Hey, they offered me a 12, which would hit my pairing." And we kind of talked about it for a minute. And Keith said, "I think I can win the game, but it's risky." He was like, "I think probably 70% of the time I win it bigger than a 12." But the rest of the time, it could go real bad for me if his shooting hits. Yep. So we talked about it for a minute, and we said, okay, offer him a 14, but if he takes a 13 and that hits our prediction, just take it. So Keith countered with a 14. They agreed on a 13, and we figured it was better to just cut our losses, take the guaranteed win, and move on. They did end up playing the game, and Keith actually, I think, got like a 15 or 16. So but it was one of those, again, kind of like my game, where we said, look, if we can guarantee that we hit our prediction, just don't take the risk. And that's what we wanted. We wanted to bring home points. Now, I talked to my opponent after they agreed on the score, and he said, we think that's a win for us. We predicted that as a worse one. But yeah, so big props on this round goes to Chris,
yep,
who sucked out that bad Dark Elf list and managed to pull an 11 out of it. I think it was probably one of the best games that Chris has played in a while. He just kind of gave up on the objective and scrapped and fought and managed actually to win on points. So he actually got a 14 and then lost the objective.
Yeah, I remember walking past that table, and there were like 3 Krakens just staring down Chris's line. And then the next time I walk by, there's only 1 Kraken. What the hell happened? It was pretty impressive. So yeah, definitely mad props to Chris for pulling that out. And again, that Dark Elf player is one of the best Dark Elf players in the world for sure.
And then again, props for Phil. He got another Vermin Swarm and kind of knocked it out of the park. I think this was a consistent theme as people kept thinking Vermin Swarm could fight UD, and the answer is just that the UD healing just shrugs off the shooting of the Vermin Swarm. So yeah, once again, you can see most of the predictions are pretty close. There aren't, I think maybe Justin and Mike were the only two who came, and I guess Jeff, we had a couple that came in a little bit lower than predicted, but not awful. So we did end up winning the round. We did not cap it, but we brought in 87 points, which is a solid win in ETC standards. So not a huge win, but kind of a small to medium win.
Right.
So here's the big one. So Spain is the winner from last year. They're consistently one of the 3 or 4 best teams. Hugo, our coach, is from Spain and spent the whole year trying to teach us how to play Spanish style. And we spent the whole year hearing about how the Spanish players are amazing, how they out-deploy everyone, how they out-move everyone, And then I think Hugo was terrified when we got the Spanish. I think Hugo was the most stressed out of anyone on the team by far. So again, they're just a solid team throughout the board, or throughout the, from top to bottom. Cal, their beast herd player, is probably one of the best in the world. And so yeah, we looked at it and we said, let's just try to get these matches winnable. Again, just try to hit our predictions, and not be heroes, but just bring home points. So you can see, and this is the one pairing matrix. You can probably see it looks a lot different than the other ones.
Yeah, almost all yellow.
So yeah, literally 1 green and 7 yellows. Their lists were tough, and so this is now the second. We've hit 2 of our 4 worst matrices. But yeah, so got a couple mirror matches. I talked to them after the event, and they said they try to pair into mirror matches sometimes because they feel on mirror matches the better skilled player is going to win. So that's why I got ogres, Jake got dark elves. In some of the cases they were trying to match skill on skill. So this is kind of what it looked like. Obviously, it's still predicted as a win. If you average it out, I think we still pair into like an 82. But obviously, this matrix looks a lot worse than some of our others.
Oh.
Oop, did it not?
I guess, did you not have scores for that one?
Oh, I should have. Okay, well, I can tell you what happened. Actually, Jeremy, do you have the scores on you by any chance?
I don't. Yeah.
So
it's not there. That's weird.
So we did not do very well this round.
I'll pull them up while you're talking.
I know Chris got I want to say a 15 or 16 against their demons. He won. I managed to get a 20 against their ogres. Nice. Which was I once again called it. He deployed his army, and I looked at it. I had not put a single model on the table, and just to give you a sense of how good these guys are, I looked at his deployment and went, "Fuck, I'm going to lose this game."
That's macro right there.
Yeah, just looking at it, you could just see 2 turns ahead, and you're like, he's going to push me into this corner, and I'm going to have to do something to get out because he's just going to force me back. I'm going to lose the mobility game, and he's just going to pick me apart. Which for the first 3 turns is kind of what happened. We had kind of some weird dice happen. There was a totem that broke a unit that it shouldn't have, overran super far, which gave some charges that shouldn't. And then he failed a Swift Stride 6, and then it meant that basically his block was sitting in front of my whole army. So it ended up a big win to me. I do have to say that there was some luck in my favor in this one, but my head hurt at the end of this game, even getting the 20, because literally from the time the first model came down, like he pushed me all the way. He was a real good player.
Well, damn impressive you got a 20 on that. I have the scores here, Ryan, if you want me to go through the rest. Yeah. No, damn impressive that you got that 20, though. So Chris ended up getting a 13 on his Demon Legions.
Okay.
Hugo, I have my notes here, too. Hugo commented that he was in pretty good position on turn 3. So I think it was a thing where Chris just did Chris's thing and played spherically and outplayed him for the 13 on a yellow matchup. So that was solid for us. Jake ended up getting a 0 here. It was like dicey for several turns, as I remember. And then I believe there was like a big combo charge, and around turn 4, and Jake's general went down, and it was kind of a mop up from there. Jeff's Beast against the Beast Herds Cal, again, like one of the best players in the world. By turn 2, Jeff's Wizard was dead, and it was bad positioning, it was bad everything. But in the very end, then Jeff eked out 2 points here.
And I just heard about this game from the other people. This should tell you how good Cal is. Mm-hmm. So I think it was turn 2. Jeff moved up, moved his models. I think was either starting the magic phase or something like that. Mentioned something about being in the lake, turning off flaming, and there was some sort of rule dispute. And Cal was like, "Oh, actually, that's not how it worked." They looked it up, and Jeff was wrong. Jeff hadn't understood the rule or was wrong about how. Whether it was units or I think it was Jeff thought it was models in the lakes, and it was actually if the unit center is in the lake. And Cal was like, "Oh no, just take back the move. Just move it where you want." Like, wow. Yeah. wasn't like how you think of ETC players is like, I am going to crush you. Right. Oh, I caught you and you made this tiny error, and I'm not going to let you take it back, and I'm going to argue about every inch. Apparently, Cal was like, no, just do what you wanted. It's fine. Super nice guy, but is so confident and so good at what he's doing that he still proceeded to. He can let his opponent take back mistakes, and because he knows he's just going to run over everyone. Props to Jeff. He was the first person this tournament that Cal didn't 20. Yeah. Definitely.
So Justin did a really good job against their UD player and got a 15 out of that yellow. So another big win for us. Phil, let's see, who do I have? Oh, Keith on the Warriors was a yellow, pulled a 7. So not bad, slightly under prediction. Then we had Mike against their VS player and got a 4. So that really hurts when you have like a green matchup and we pull a 4 on that. So again, those are tough matchups when that happens. And then Phil, again, like Ryan said, the 0s really hurt, and Phil got a 0 in this one. I have in my notes that the bunker was in trouble on turn 2 against the VC player. So yeah. We ended up with 61 points and just barely avoided getting capped here.
Yeah, it's one of those where the 0s hurt. You can be a bracket off, and it's not that bad for the team. It's when you get 2 brackets off your prediction that's when it starts hurting. So it's the green that goes to a orange, it's the yellow that goes to a red. That's when you really start feeling it as the team, when those predictions start significantly off. It's still Spain's one of the best teams in the world. We knew it was going to be a hard fight. And obviously we still have some work to do. We didn't like the result. I would say that at the end of it, they were they were the better team. They deserved to win. I think we were, the minor consolation was we didn't get capped. Right. that 1 point we held on to, we didn't need the pity points. But obviously, yeah, this was, we were hoping for better results. And after, 2 caps, because once again we were on table 1 for the fourth, or going into round 4. It hurt. It stung a little bit, but hey, you can take a loss in the ETC and you can still do well. So we took the loss, but we knew we weren't out of it. We were still, I think we had fallen down to table 3 or 4 after this. So still easily in the top 10. We were still in the mix.
Then you had Ukraine.
Yep. So we got Ukraine on breakthrough. Ukraine has been doing pretty well. If you look at some of the Polish results, there's a Ukraine team that goes to one of their like 5-man team tournaments, 4 or 5-man team tournaments that has been doing really well. This is once again, you kind of had the benefit of the night before. We could sit down and kind of look at, okay, how are these players doing? And one of the things we noticed, they had a really interesting UD list. So it was 3 blocks of chariots and 2 catapults. And everybody actually had initially rated it as a pretty good match, I think partly because it was a very unusual UD list, and people looked at it and said, I think we could do well. He's not taking the snakes and the hourglass and all the kind of the normal crutches. However, when we looked at, Hugo pulled up the results again and kind of looked through and said, man, this UD guy is crushing people. And we said, we may need to reevaluate this. And we sat down and took a longer look and said, you know what, this list is, while it can fight in combat, this is actually a pretty shooty list. He has, I think, from the chariots, he puts out 40 or 50 bow shots. He had 2 catapults. He had div. We were like, this is actually, he wants a toughness 3 army that he can just shoot off the board, and then once they're weak, ram it. So I think a lot of people changed their ratings on this match the night before, and I think it was the right move. So overall, we once again, we tried to pair people into good matches. Once again, we think we got a pretty good matrix. We got 4 greens, 2 oranges, 2 yellows, so not bad. Definitely looked like we were, actually I think one of our better pairings. If you just add it up, I think we're paired into a kind of a medium to large win here.
Yeah.
So you can see the results. We did win, but it was a very small win. I had an EOS player. Mine basically came down to he managed to scrape the objective, to push the objective, which is the only reason it wasn't higher. I know Chris just ran over an Orc and Goblin player.
One of the highlights, another highlight of VTC, Actor, who is the VC player from Australia, just like a really funny guy and a really nice guy, walked by in turn 4, and it was just like, Chris is literally fisting his opponent right now. It was so funny. Yeah, Chris just mowed the guy over. It was great. And Ryan, you did too. Like at one point, I have in my notes, wow, the halberds are fucked on turn 3, because like, he had his entire halberd block facing backwards towards his board edge, on the board edge, and Ryan's entire army was like encircling it, waiting to charge it in the ass. And I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah,
that position was disgusting.
I had one round of combat where I think I did 37 wounds to the halberds. The thing that killed me in that game was I had 3 restraint checks and a march check that I failed altogether, and it meant that I couldn't come back and get the last little remnant of his army, which managed to squeak down the edge of the board. But it was still a good result. I know Keith was really disappointed because his opponent had to make something stupid like 3 or 4 leadership 6 checks on his pendulum and on his flag units, and he made all of them.
Yeah, Keith got his pendulum unit with full plague monks into the opponent's pendulum unit, which had 0 plague monks, and the dude held for like 4 rounds of combat. It was ridiculous. We got very unlucky in that game.
Unlucky, you mean?
Unlucky, yeah.
And then I didn't actually see the other game, so I can't really speak to. But obviously it hurt a little bit. Justin and Phil at least hit their predictions, even though they got kind of lower scores. The 2 that hurt a little bit were there were 2 greens that dropped a little bit.
Yeah, especially I think We decided on the Dark Elves because we thought it'd be such a good counter to Warriors. And so that would really hurt because we were hoping, we knew there'd be a ton of Warriors because they're a really good army now. And we just were able to counter them with pretty much in any of our rounds, really. I don't think we were successful.
So Jake had brought Dark Elves last year to ETC, and he was our highest scoring player. He scored 78 or something like that. And he really last year was teeing off on Warriors. He was bringing home really big scores versus Warrior players. And one of our because Jake had been playing Empire through a good chunk of the year. And one of our discussions kind of right before list submission was, we talked with Jake and we said, look, do you feel more comfortable with this Empire list, or do you want to bring your Dark Elves? And we talked through it, and with some of the maps we felt like didn't help shooting very much. There was a lot of terrain near the center of the board, and then we felt that the Dark Elves paired very well into some of the large meta that we're seeing right now. And we figured there'd be a lot of Warriors, and Jake would be good against Warriors. The problem we ran into is Jake played several games versus Warriors, but he hadn't played the Portal heavy Warriors yet. He didn't run into anyone who was playing them. There aren't as many people in the U.S., or at least weren't as many people playing them here prior to ETC. And I think Jake, this was his third game against Warriors, and I think he came to me after this one. He's like, these Portal lists, I can't do what I used to do versus Warriors. And yeah, it hurt a little bit. Obviously, he still got points. There aren't any zeros on this board. Right. But that's, this is why we got an 82 is, unlike the other rounds where everybody was slightly overperforming their predictions, this round everybody's kind of on the lower end of their predictions, and it drags it from what we predicted a medium win down to a small win.
Okay.
But at this point, so going into game 5, so we've played 5 rounds already. We're 4-1. We're still on, I think, table 3 at this point. And we did the math and said, if we cap Italy, or I think it was even if we scored 90-something points, then we are in a range where in previous years we would be on the podium. Okay. Because usually the third place score is often around kind of 520 range. And we did the math and said, if we get a 90-something out of Italy, we think that we're going to be on the podium. Now Italy was, again, it is now the third of the 4 just bad matrices for us. The last one was Germany, who was on table 1. But they were the ones that they had lists that nobody wanted to play. The 2 big ones were I didn't actually put it down. Keith didn't play UD. Keith played Dwarven Holds.
Yeah, Keith played Holds.
Yeah, but this was their Dwarven Hold list was like very heavy on Slayers, and their KOE list. This is the guy who came up with the KOE list, like the list that is meta for KOE right now with the Killy Duke and all that. This guy brought it to ETC last year and has been playing it since then. He's the inventor of that list. So we knew that those were going to be kind of big, heavy hitters. But overall, we know Italy's a good team. They've won ETC before. They're usually in the top 5. So it was a rough draw, but we figured, look, we're going to try to swing for the fences, and we're going to try to be on the podium here. You can see, we think we paired okay. 3 greens, 1 orange, and some yellows. So we looked at it and we said, look, if we can hit our predictions again, we're in the range of where we think we're going to potentially compete for a podium spot if we can hit our predictions. Yeah, and unfortunately, it didn't work. So this round,
it didn't work.
Yeah, so 60 to 100. We didn't technically get capped because we scored that 60 ourselves, but it hurt. And I have to say, I was the one who brought home the 0 in that round. It hurt, and yeah.
Tell them what happened. Ridiculously bad luck.
Yeah, so KOE is actually a match, even with the Hyper Killy Duke, I've played it a lot. It was one of the games I've practiced the most. And usually I find that the mobility of the ogres I can cancel out a lot of the threat of the Duke. And usually I can, the game will be in a 7 to 12 range most of the time. And so turn 2, I had most of his army surrounded. I had 2 hunters, a giant, some yetis that were all behind him. We were kind of had a face-off going with our Orok. I was cleaning up the 2 flanks. It was going how I wanted the game to go. And then I charged 4 yetis into the front of 6 realm knights. So I charged him just 6 regular knights, no buffs in the combat. So Gene, you're a KOE player. How do you think that's going to go?
4 Yetis only have 12 attacks, right?
12 attacks.
Yeah, that's not.
Or no, sorry. They have paired weapons.
Okay.
So it'll be 15 attacks.
You're probably going to get 2, maybe 3 wounds through.
That's what I figured. Yeah.
And 6 KOE knights.
Well, it'll be I go first.
Ah, okay. So he maybe does 1 or 2 back to you.
That's what I figured. I figure I probably win this combat small. I probably outgrind him in the long term. I clean up a little unit that's a pain in my butt. Yeah, it's great. Didn't happen. So the Yetis lost the combat pretty bad. I think I did no wounds and he did 3.
Oh.
My general was right there, but I broke. And he ran me down. Also happened to break the hunter and the giant that were standing next to him. The hunter overran into the path of the knight's overrun, so then died. The knights then overran into the flank of my general, which even that, if you do the math, I probably take 1 wound and I hold, and then I win the combat in the grind. But no, I lost the combat. I failed my leadership check, and my general got run down. And then I basically had a mage that was standing in front of 6 realm knights. And that was all on the top of 2.
Right.
So basically my whole strong flank collapsed, and at that point it was and then my Orok failed a frenzy and wandered up in front of a questing knight unit. So it just, the whole thing just collapsed on me. Yeah, so it was one of those that from turn 2 on, it was just cleanup for him. And yeah, I think unfortunately, we had some similar experiences on a couple of the games. I think Mike had a little bit of bad luck. I think Jake's army didn't do what he wanted, and it was just things didn't work out. Yeah, so we ended with a 60, and the really disappointing part is that took us from being in about 6th place. I think we were right around 6 when this round started. We dropped all the way to 13th place.
Wow.
With that 1 loss, because because of the cap system, teams stay so tightly clustered that the big loss brought us all the way down. So post ETC, so we ended 13th. Obviously, I think most of the team was pretty disappointed in that result, considering that going into round 4, we were on table 1. We won round 5. So we had 4 wins, 2 losses, but the 2 losses were unfortunately pretty big. So not quite where we wanted. It was really kind of a tale of 2. So this is we do a post-ETC kind of variance analysis and rundown, try to look at what did we predict, what did we get, where were we dropping points, where were we picking up points, and try to analyze how we did and see, compare versus future years. Because, for example, some of you shouldn't be punished for taking a bunch of bad matchups for the team. Somebody might come home with 30 points, but they took all the bad matches. Like, for example, Justin here, if you look at the first box, he actually got the hardest pairings of the team. He paired into 52 points, is what he predicted, but he brought home 71. Yeah. So that should say even more impressive 71 because he did it off a very impressive or very hard pairing schedule. So we've done some variance analysis. We've looked at it. Obviously, I think everybody's a little, like I said, a little disappointed. I think we had a lot of room for improvement. I think the one thing that we can take away is even in our 2 losses against some pretty darn good teams, we at least gave a relatively good account of ourselves. There were no pity points for Team USA this year, just barely, but none. If you look at the ETC does on the Tourney Keeper does a strength of schedule analysis and kind of weights it based on your strength of schedule. We would have moved up to 8th on the strength of schedule analysis, which we think is probably a little more, kind of more how we felt the tournament was going. We played some hard teams. We were near the top tables. Obviously, the second half of the ETC didn't go nearly as well. Overall, I think our macro approach worked well. I think everybody was really impressed with Hugo's map packs, and we want to do more of that kind of earlier in analyzing and knowing, because it's so comforting to know, oh, I just won the roll to go first. I want this side, and this is the terrain I'm picking for my hill, or this is where I'm putting the token. Like I think it was my Belgium opponent. It was Belgium or Czech. I did it, and I won the roll, and I'm like, here. And he gave me a weird look because I don't think he'd had anyone who picked that quickly. So yeah, I think we did a lot of kind of good work there. And then so team voted. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say I was really impressed based on what I saw on the pairings that you guys pulled off.
Yeah,
I didn't think you lost the pairings on any of those based on.
Yeah, and obviously, it's almost a pair of, if you look at the middle box, that's our kind of our actual results.
Right.
And you can almost see it's a pair of a tale of 2 ETCs. So our first 3 rounds, we won all 3 of them, and it was a matter of we were hitting our predictions. And the rounds we lost, the pairings, other than Spain, the pairings weren't that much worse. It was just a matter of players weren't able to hit their predictions as reliably.
Right.
And that bled points on us. Really the only team we didn't pair very well against was Spain. And they're amazing. We did, if you look at all of the teams we played, this is the other part that hurts. So we won 4 of our 6 games. Every one of the teams finished above us.
All the ones that you beat.
Everyone that we beat finished above us. So that's partly why our strength of schedule was so hard. We played only top 10 teams. We had a very hard schedule. Now, granted, we didn't perform. I think our next step as a team, in years past, we would have played Spain and Italy, and we would have brought home, 20, 30 points. So we did better, but obviously you can see our results versus the really top teams were not where they need to be. And I think that's our focus, is kind of we need to bring those more in line. And if we can do that, then I think we're going to be very, very competitive at future ETCs. So we had a vote, and Jeremy stood for captain and was the unanimous winner for next year. So I know he had a little bit of kind of what he wanted to talk about for ETC going ahead. So I'll kind of shut up now and let him talk.
Yeah, Ryan did a great job as captain, but he's going to be having babies and stuff. So he's like, maybe captain's not in the cards for me this year. So yeah, I was happy to fill in, and we're going to try to keep the momentum going as much as possible here. So if you could hit the next slide. This will just take a minute. I just have a couple slides to talk through. So yeah, I just want to let everyone know the applications are open right now. We've already got, I think, 23 applicants, which is great. So yeah, that you can find that on the Facebook group. It's just a Google form. It should only take you a few minutes to get through it. If you can't find the application for some reason, just hit me up on Facebook or text me or WhatsApp or whatever. I'm pretty much everywhere at this point. So yeah, I think I'm going to continue coaching. So the cool thing about that is it actually lets us get more coverage with coaching, which I think with Hugo, especially this year, we realize is more important than ever. So what we're going to have is one coach captain, which will be me. We can get 2 additional coaches on top of that and 8 players. So we'll have basically like 3 coaches if we can fill all those spots. So we're looking for coaches as well as players. But yeah, I think it'll be really good to have 3 people sort of covering the tables and helping people out and all that kind of stuff. So it should be really solid.
The other thing for people who are interested, one, it's a good way to experience ETC. Some people don't want the pressure of the team environment, or just aren't sure they're ready, or don't want to put in quite all the time. I think like that was Hugo had never been to an ETC. I had never met Hugo when we took him as a coach, and I think he had a blast this year.
Absolutely.
And we had talked about Hugo playing, and he had even said, I think I want to coach again. I had so much fun. And the coaches really do matter a lot, because one of the ways that you need to get better is you need somebody who is watching your game and critiquing you on how are you moving, how could you have deployed better, how are you seeing the board, and kind of that's the way you need to improve. Who can see the things that you don't necessarily see, or remind you of things that happen in the game, that were important. And it makes such a big deal to have people who can, you can bounce ideas off of, you can call over in the middle and have a discussion. Those timeouts are huge.
Yeah.
They really make a big difference, being able to take a timeout and kind of talk through either a problem situation or trying to decide how aggressive to get. I'd really encourage anyone who's curious, or might want to go but isn't sure, wants to be involved, try coaching. I mean, it really is, I think, a lot of fun. Jeremy's been a coach now for 2 years, and I think he can talk about, it's not just, some people have concerns about going to the ETC and not playing, but you can obviously speak to that a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's like the best of all worlds, because I get, like Hugo said, I can watch 8 games at once. I don't have the pressure of possibly losing, which I personally can't handle. So I've always known I wanted to be coach. I get to still hang out with everybody, which is amazing, and get the experience every year. And yeah, it's great. And the team really does, really is thankful for the stuff the coaches do. So yeah, I think it's fantastic. I'm going to coach as long as I possibly can. So definitely. But yeah, just to get through this really quickly, then one of the things we really want to try this year is to kind of like build a community around ETC as well. So even if you maybe don't, you can't commit to going to Luxembourg, which is where ETC 2020 is, just let me know, and you can still get in on the chat, which right now is in WhatsApp, but we're going to move to Discord. So we have a little bit more control over channels and everything. But you'll be chatting with the best players in the country. They'll be talking about lists. We'll have universal battle scrimmages. We'll do some probably learning from Hugo about macro. And these, you can practice against the best players and sort of learn from the best players. So we're going to try to sort of really focus on growing that community this year. And then, like it says here, the ETC is selected sometime after US Masters. We may wait a little bit longer after Masters. We'll see, but it's going to be somewhere around that time. So January, February, probably where we'll finally choose the list. So one more slide there, if you could, Gene. So yeah, just to talk about some of the goals, and I've kind of covered some of these already. We're going to hopefully do a couple more of these sort of social events with Gene. And thanks again, Gene, for letting us sort of steal your show for an episode here to talk about ETC and kind of help raise awareness. And again, it's about sort of, creating a community. And the idea is that, we want people to consider themselves as teammates and not rivals, because in a country like the US, where it's a big thing and we don't really know, some of the East Coast players might not know some of the West Coast players. We're trying to kind of like get that community together, So you're not really trying to like beat out people for the spot. It's really more, we want the mindset of it's more of a community, and then the best players will go and everyone else will be cheering for them and sort of supporting them as best they can, and not have hard feelings, hopefully. So, that's like the dream world, obviously, and we'll see how close we can get to that, but that's definitely the direction we want to take. Some of the other things I'd like to get going this year, like I said, inter-team scrimmages I think will be important. Again, it's tough to get people on the team and the applicants all together in one place, so we'll have to do stuff online as much as we can. I'd like some of the senior players, like Ryan and Chris and Justin, some of the guys that have been on a couple of years and really, know their stuff, to sort of shadow games as much as they can and maybe do some mentoring. So we'll try to kind of like do that, to raise the play level of people. And then, like Ryan said, just get more behind that idea of the macro game. And you can bet that as soon as the map packs are released this year, we'll be all over them, studying them. And we'll get to the point where, when somebody sits down in round one of ETC, we really need to get to the point where they look at the map, they already know, if it's secure target, this is where I'm deploying. If the player gets the other table edge, I'm deploying here. If it's, whatever, this is where I'm putting the objectives down, that kind of thing. So they'll know that just from all the studying we're going to be doing. So it'll be great. We're also going to probably raise the games required to maybe 60 or 70, get a little bit more play time in, and that that'll help with tournaments around, and then also universal battle and those inter-team scrimmages we talked about. It'll also give our senior players more time to shadow other people. And then, Rye's like fierce PowerPoint that he put together last year, I'd love to turn that into some kind of like handbook this year. So it's a personal goal of mine to get some kind of sort of, here's the ETC Bible especially for new applicants, where we can say, catch yourself up on this. This is how we think. This is what our culture's like. These are the things you should be practicing to get good enough to be on the team, etc. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Yeah, I don't know, Rye, is there anything else you want to add? I know Rye is obviously going to be an integral part to the plan moving forward as well. He's going to have his hands full, with obviously some of the
literally.
Yeah, it's not like he's going anywhere. So yeah, I'm going to lean heavily on him and some of the other senior players to help me out with this year as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, anyone in the U.S. who is interested, or even just really wants to focus on improving their level of play, and maybe being at the ETC in the future, maybe not this year but a couple years down the road, if that's a goal of yours. We really do want to try to get people involved, and the best way for us as a team to get better is going to be getting everybody in the US to be better players, because that's going to push everyone. So we want to get as many people in and talk about, not just like Jeremy said, not just the nitty gritty of, is it better that I put a shield on this character, or are feral orcs better than regular orcs? It's how do you see the game? What's your strategy going into the match? And kind of what is your overall kind of plan for the game. And I think we have some interesting ideas. Hugo's been like a machine coming up with ideas on how we can kind of practice that. I think there'll be some really interesting and innovative stuff, at least in the US, that we're going to be trying. And it should just be a lot of fun. And if you just want to meet other people, get involved with the ETC community, I think Jeremy, is going to do a great job from that standpoint. Just really kind of making it so it's not just 8 guys who hang out in their own little world, but really kind of make it a group thing to make us better this year and in future years.
Yep. Well said.
All right. That sounds really good. And again, the application is there's an ETC Facebook group.
Yep, absolutely. The application link is there. And like I said, if you can't find it, just reach out to one of the 3 of us and we'll point you in the right direction. Yeah.
And we're looking for people who are enthusiastic, have a good resume. One of my goals last year was just try to really take people who who weren't, weren't just the people that I know. We took Mike, who I had never met before we actually selected him. I'd only played him online, and then we took Hugo, who I'd never met, but really impressed me with the application stuff. And so I think even if you aren't part of the community yet, or think, oh, I'm not in the circle, so I'll never be able to go, please apply, get involved, and you might be surprised. You might be on the team in Luxembourg next year if you're committed and work hard.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming on and doing this, because I know a lot of people are interested.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for having us, Gene. It's been
Especially
awesome.
on how it went for you guys and everything else. And yeah, that was really great.
Thanks a lot, Gene.
Cool. Thanks, man.
All right, well, let's wrap this up. Again, thanks again, and thanks for everybody who's listening.
Thanks all.